Hey, everybody. Oh, welcome to a very special edition of Fairly Normal. I'm so excited once again. This week is a guy we've tried to make this happen gotta be 5 or 6 times, in between his schedule and my schedule just hasn't worked. But you guys know how into positivity and being happy and spreading that shit is important to me. This guy, I think, is one level up from me. And for different reasons. Like, I have so many questions. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tait Fletcher. And now you were bobbing your head. You know this song.
Yeah, man, this is fantastic. I mean, this is great. Every day, every
episode.
podcast. Yeah.
Because for me, this is such a right?
Yeah.
Do they make music like this anymore?
No.
In this voice, what?
Yeah.
Right? Come on. Right? You know what, though? The 80s. The 80s had that period of time where there was like 4 or 5 years where every song was about just going out and getting fucked up. Do you know what I mean? Like that whole Motley Crue,
yeah, Poison, Warrant, all that stuff was spawned from that. Yeah,
where they were just like, "Hey, everybody, every song, let's go get fucked up."
Yeah, let's tempt the devil and party.
Oh, and that is. Did you read The Dirt, Motley Crue?
Is that Nikki Sixx's book?
No, Nikki Sixx's is The Dirt is all 4 of the guys. And so the book was basically they would talk about an event, but everybody. So Tommy Lee got to tell his version, but then Nikki Sixx and Mick Mars,
right,
and they all get to give their comments on what they think really happened.
That's amazing.
There was
you got to read that.
There was a story about how they were. I guess one of them had an apartment near on the Sunset Strip. They were having a party, and then they were going out to play. And there was some guy at the party that was annoying them or something. So they held him down and they nailed his earlobe to the coffee table, and then they went out to their gig.
You are with an impossible choice.
I mean, it's like,
amazing.
If you're that guy, how long does it take you just to go, I'm just going to have to rip this off? I mean, because it depends, too, if they just nail it a little or if they go all the way down to the head.
Maybe you want that scar.
Maybe.
You're like, Tommy Lee did this to me.
That's actually a great story.
It's a really good story.
That's a great icebreaker.
I wonder if he tells that story right now.
He tells it to get laid every day of his life.
Yeah.
Buddy, I
love all those guys, too. Them, Guns N' Roses, all those brokesters came from other places. Broke is a joke. They're all living together in a $300 apartment in some shithole, and it was just a different time with the Roxy and with all those clubs down
Sunset
there.
Boulevard.
They would all play at Sunset, and then take off. And now I look at what music is now, and you've got to have these huge tours. I was thinking about Jane's Addiction. It's maybe one of the last big, huge rock bands that actually made money off records and CDs and stuff. That doesn't happen anymore.
Well, there's no.
It's a different commerce.
Yeah, and if you ask musicians now, they're not making money off of their recorded music at all. It's all live.
No, Beyonce doesn't go on tour because she. Yeah.
No, yeah. But some of those people like Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, their tour was so expensive that what I heard is they broke even with tickets and they made money off of their sponsor.
Crazy.
Because they were pulling 10 trucks with him, 12 trucks.
Right.
When I toured with Cable Guy, he would play basically almost the same size places, and he paid 3 people. He had us on a bus. Have you ever ridden on a tour bus before?
No.
Best sleep I've ever had in my life.
Really?
Oh, dude! Because the middle cabin, Cable Guy had his own decked out, right?
Yeah.
The middle cabin, so you walk on the tour bus, and the front is like, refrigerator, couple of couches, TV, 2 TVs. And then you go into the middle, which was 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 bunks, and then the back had a couple of couches too.
And there's 3 of you guys and a driver?
1, 2, 3, 4 of us and a driver. Okay. But the driver did not sleep on the bus. The driver drove.
Yep.
So there were doors that closed that middle off with no windows. So when the doors were shut, it was pitch black.
That's awesome.
You had a TV in your bunk, and it just rocked you to sleep like a baby.
That's awesome.
Never slept better in my life. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. I would love to do it. I know some guys wouldn't want to, but I would love to do a bus tour. Have you driven around the country much?
Just, on my own, yeah.
On your own?
Yeah. Just me and a car and a dog.
Are you an adventure guy?
I used to be more so, but now that I'm more busy, I'm more dictated by what I want to accomplish.
Right.
And just, I think it's weird. I think there's those times in life where you're like, this is the time when I have nothing going. I mean, anybody wonders like when that time is, you don't know what you want to do with your life and you don't know where you're going. You don't really have a great job. That's the time to get in your car and just go with your dog and go for a drive and camp places.
Don't you think that's important?
The best.
What did you...
I think because you get to see different people.
Yes.
And you get to see, and you go and you stay in a town for a few days or a few weeks or a month or whatever. And you get to understand like, it's like I just went to China, which was fucking awesome.
For what?
A guy asked me to go as like an ambassador with CrossFit, with the brand. And so Greg Glassman owns CrossFit, and he's on his way to go and try to open up into that country. And so we just went there to go check it out and look around. But I think about it as this dark, oppressive communist regime with tanks in the street.
Yeah.
And all this, and all I see is people loving their families and capitalism thriving and just goodness and abundance everywhere. Like it was a trip. It was not what I thought about it. I think we get a weird narrative for these places, and I think we do that in our own country. Our country is so big. I mean, and I think it speaks to, like a weird tie-in, but it speaks to the political, that everybody's got an opinion about all this stuff that's going on right now. And I think that it's important to think about these things, but what's important also is not to be super divisive, and we need to listen more. And I think the thing that cracks us in half is when we look at what the tail, like Donald Trump being elected to be president is like the tail of the dog wagging. It's not the dog, like it's not the root cause, it's a symptom. And so what is it that people feel so disenfranchised that becomes an operative choice for them? Like how do you heal that schism? And maybe that's the listening. It's the hardest listening you have to do. You got to listen to a guy that's got a rebel flag on the back of his pickup truck or whatever. But that motherfucker's got a voice too, and we're either together or we're not. And in a certain way, you've got to. The more listening, I think more listening. It lets you listen in a different way.
I agree. I when you travel as much as I do, and I travel almost every weekend, what really strikes me is that, guess what? I know we all may not have the same ideas on how to get there. It's fine. But we all basically want the same things. We all want to be happy. We all want our family to be safe. We all want jobs. We all would like to be able to have enough money to take a vacation. We all, we want our neighbors to be friendly and safe and all that stuff. Like, we all want the same things. So it seems amazing to me that when we all basically want the same things, safety, freedom, and a little bit of, jobs and freedom to be able to do things, it's crazy to me that gets put in the background, and the things that are less important, the things that stoke your fear, that's what comes up. Yeah. Right?
You're a communist.
Yes.
Like, you know what? There's not anybody that lives in a communist country that's like, I'm a communist and that's the ground I stand on. Yeah. They don't give a fuck about that.
They want the same things we want. They want the same thing. How long did you...
I was just there a week.
And how long did you travel around our country?
Maybe, intermittently for a couple of years, I was pretty steady. I don't know. I'd been, I guess, to every state, I think, in the country. And
I'm going to start a little back.
Okay.
Because for the people who don't know you. So you're born, you said in Michigan.
I'm born in Michigan.
Okay.
Born on the shore of Lake Huron in Michigan. And I moved to New Mexico in probably 91, I guess.
To do what?
I went to college there.
What's your family
classical literature program.
Family like?
My family, my mom and dad are divorced. It was one of those things where I was like, for sure they're divorced when I'm 4 years old, but they didn't know it until I got to be like 25, right? Or whatever. Like, it's like, they didn't, like, you guys were split up. They're like, we got divorced now this year. I'm like, that happened when I was a kid.
They
just stayed together, not liking each other very much.
Could you tell as a kid?
Oh, absolutely.
Really? How?
Yeah.
What's your earliest?
That's why when people talk now, they're like, I'm gonna stay together for the kids. I'm like, they know, and you're just teaching them that, like, hatred and being like not very caring about who you live with. That's called love now to them. You've just taught them a value that's
such
weird.
an interesting. Do you mind if we talk about this for a second?
Not at all.
Because what I always said, so my wife met me when I was raising my 3 kids, and she understood this too. But I did not let her meet the kids until I knew I was going to marry her.
Oh, right.
Because I didn't want my theory of what you're saying is your kids observe,
Right.
and they pick things up. And what I didn't want them to pick up is that women were going to come in and out of the house. What age do you feel like you started picking up that vibe with you and with your mom and your dad?
Where they were separated they weren't in a union anymore.
Yeah. Did they live together?
Yeah.
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have an older sister. Probably when I was 7 or 8, I was pretty present to that, I guess.
And how did that affect who you were moving forward? And did you feel like you had to pick a side?
No, but I felt on I only really saw my mom, so it was really a one-sided in that way anyway. But and then my dad didn't really understand. Like then I went right into trouble. But like I felt like I was alone since I was a kid too. Really, I didn't feel like I was really.
Who was the grown-up out of your mom and dad?
Safety.
Because
what's a grown up? We got to define grown up.
Okay.
Then. Because dad was like really rigid, and this is like I'm doing this, going to work, and things look a certain way. And my mom was so nice, man. She's like such a dreamy lady. She was like, I came home in the first grade maybe, and I was with my best friend. We were holding hands walking down the hallway in school.
Yeah.
And somebody walks by and goes, "Fag," and I had no idea what they meant, except I knew that it was mean.
Yeah.
Whatever they were saying.
You can tell by the tone. Yeah.
I'm like, that's not. They're not complimenting us right now. And whatever. And we go on, and I go home, and I told my mom that. And I go, "What is that?" And they called us gay, probably.
Yeah.
I go, "What is that?" She goes, "Oh, it's just that you're happy or whatever." I go, "That's not what they meant. They weren't calling us happy." And she says, "Well, it's like when a boy likes a boy or a girl likes a girl, a boy gets married to a boy or whatever." And I go, and this is in the 70s, and I'm like, boys can marry boys, and she goes, "Absolutely." And I'm like, for sure, in reality, not. So my mom's not really reality based. She's more dream based about like, this is what my ideals I would like to think about the world. So therefore, this is what I think about the world. Like, and that was the narrative for her, and it was real helpful to me, I think, in a lot of ways, because it taught me to not accept what status quo was and what societal standards were in a lot of ways.
Are you more like your mom than your dad?
In some ways.
I imagine
there's a good balance of both, and I used to really have an axe to grind, like with my dad, and as long as I had that, there was always a schism between us. What was
the axe for?
There was so many interactions, and we didn't speak from when I was probably 15 to 18, like no words, and we lived in the same house for most of that time. Like he'd walk into a room and leave if I was there, type thing. It was like,
really,
yeah, we were really at odds, and then the phones in their house were tapped because of me. They had,
why were the phones
because
tapped?
I was selling dope since I was 12 years old, I guess. And so like that whole thing was going on. And then when I got out of the house, there's still a lot of blowback. Like I was arrested when I was 21 on a bank robbery charge. And
where was that?
That was in Colorado. I'd already been out of Michigan for a while, but I'd left Michigan because everybody I know was getting arrested and getting federal cases put on them.
So you sold for how long? How many years did you sell for?
Till I was 22, probably 23.
12. Were you a big kid at 12? You're a big dude.
Yeah. When I was, there's a picture of me. I used to play hockey, and I was probably at least a head taller than everybody else that was my age. And I grew so fast that my feet ached. That like real like when people talk about growing pains, I always think about it like, oh, it's a psychological thing. Like you've got to adjust to what. Like no, man, my fucking bones ached and hurt. And I was like, I'm sure I've got cancer. For sure. But I grew through 3 sizes of shoes, and I would buy them a size and a half bigger in a summer. Like it was rapid. And so when I was in the 9th grade, I think I remember I was 135 in 6th grade. We weighed ourselves.
But that's right at 12 years old, basically, right?
6th grade,
isn't it?
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Or is that at what? But by 9th grade, I was 6'1" and I was 205 pounds.
Dude, at 12
so
years
that's 3
old,
years.
At 12,
I put on 80 pounds.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
At 12 years old, how do you get into selling drugs?
Because there's a buddy of mine that is, older brothers
Yep.
and stuff like that, and so we were always just.
What were you selling, weed?
No, the first thing I got was microdots. And
oh, shit.
And so
that's no joke, dude.
Yeah, it was great, man.
Were you taking them at 12?
I really I took. That's when I started using. Was about 12 years old, I guess. But that was the psychedelic experiences I had. I think were the most formative parts. Like people are talking about, you don't want to damage a forming brain and all that. It's probably hazardous to say so, but I would say it's helpful. You know what I mean? I think that redirects your mind and opens your mind in a different way. Than I do get curious about what would the me be like in some parallel universe that didn't have that experience and went a different way, and then maybe just got really into sports or something. Because I didn't do anything except that for a long time. And then I'd smoke. Then I'd like selling weed, and
how much money
became
were you
the biggest
making?
Thing. When I was a kid, not much. I'd just try to get a few $100 together a week, right? And there's not any expenses. And then you know when you do start smoking weed every day, then you're like, no, I got to pay for weed every day. Yeah. And then you're like, and so it just goes from there. But I don't know. We probably like the most I would maybe between $500 and $1,500 a day you could make. And
in high school, like what did that? Did everybody know you sold? Not
everybody, but most people.
Most people. And so what does that do for your...
I would say everybody did, but I would, exactly. I would only cop to us. Yeah, anyway.
What does that do for your status? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what's your
who
am I like?
I didn't want to know anybody.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't want to know anybody. I was really
Were you
reserved.
not popular?
I was afraid of being arrested all the time. And
by the way, legitimate fear.
Yeah, I remember I was shocked when I heard Dr. Dre's album come out, The Chronic, and I thought, they're just talking openly about this? And then I was like, then it didn't dawn on me. I'm like, those guys aren't doing shit, because there's not one person I know that wouldn't beat your ass for saying their name in public like that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, like, it's just a different time. But then everything got way more agreeable later. I just went down a darker road with it, and I.
What do you mean?
Like I couldn't ever stop. Like I started drinking every day when I was like 16, and so then I went.
What do you think? Because usually there's like some sort of seminal moment or something like that. Was there one for you? Like a lot of people can look back and go, "Well, this is why I started using."
I don't know, man. I don't have a real thing. I think I found like a real freedom in that, and I thought, and it felt great, and there's a release in a lot of ways.
You have, an
aversion to responsibility. If I had to point towards anything,
well, I got that too. You have this but you have this kind of gentle aura, but you have, it's different than what people probably see, right?
Certainly, yeah.
Was that when you were selling? Did you have the same?
Different.
You're a different dude.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
What was it? Were you a little
dark, long black hair? Everything's black, and I don't like it. If you did make eye contact, like now, if you make eye contact with me, I'm like, "Hey, man, how you doing?"
Yeah.
And if I make eye contact with somebody and they look for that, that millisecond that's too long, that's like, now we're either acknowledging each other or we're gonna fight.
Yeah.
It was always for me the fight, and like, what do you need something? Like, I'd be really super shitty.
Were you a fighter in high school?
Yeah, but not in any kind of.
When did you start to train?
Not until I was in my 20s.
And this is post-selling.
Yeah.
And do you feel like because I've heard this from people before, even Brendan Schaub told me, he was like, actually people who train and are elite, a lot of those people actually calm down.
For sure.
Does that really, did you find that too?
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
come?
I think that the hardest guy to pick a fight with is a professional fighter.
How come?
Because you already know who you are. A lot of guys, why do most guys fight, I think, is they fight out of an ego deficit of some kind, and they like to show somebody who they are. Like, there's guys get mad if you say, "Oh, what, were you scared?"
Yeah.
Well, motherfucker, I'm scared all the time. I try to be scared shit all the time. I try to walk into that fear all the time. I recognize it, but I'm not over here going, "There's no fear here." Like, that's silly.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And you're hiding from something, and then you're a little bitch. You know what I mean? And so I think that the biggest thing is that when you walk down your fears and you face that and you know who you are, you don't have something to prove. And I remember Joey Villasenor, I just went back. There was probably 3 years I didn't go back to a fight gym. And I went back. I was on a movie, and the director and a coordinator wanted to go and watch these guys train, and it was all, John Jones and Cowboy and all the boys are down training, and it's like, wow, and then everybody's sparring and getting after, and there's 30 bad motherfuckers in the room, and I'm sitting there anxious and nervous as fuck because that gnawing to fight is in the and like you just want to train, and then you feel like an imposter if you're just sitting there, like you don't ever want to be a spectator,
right?
And but if you've chosen not to, it's no good. I saw Dean Thomas posted something on Twitter the other day. He says, "Motherfuck everybody that ever tried to talk me out of retirement," and he was commenting on the BJ Penn fight that happened this weekend. But
that was tough to watch.
That happens all the time. I didn't watch it. I didn't want to. I already knew it was going to happen. And you get out of that thing. You're slower. You're not as able. There's only like one guy that I know that I think could come back out of retirement and could probably clean up titles. Keith Jardine. I think that he would beat the brakes off everybody in every
GSP?
title. No way, man. He suffered. I think he suffered too much damage. He's at a smaller size to where it makes a huge difference. I think.
Has the sport changed since he left?
In 5 years, John Jones wouldn't be able to get a title shot.
Really?
Look at Leo Machida. He was doing magic to people.
Right.
And now he gets, like, it's not that. Look at Anderson Silva. He was moving like magic. He was moving in such a way that you would come to mount an attack on him, and he would sidestep, and you would fall down. He wouldn't even have to touch you. Like, I watched him do that 5 times in the first round of Chris Lieben, the first time he went in on a UFC fight night. He moved like magic. You watch him, he fought in Canada against, I'm blanking on his name right now, really great Canadian fighter, though, but that guy busted his, like an ACL, went out in the second or third round.
But when you watch on TV, and this is interesting to me because I listened to what Meryl Streep said.
Right, yeah.
And then I listened to some guys.
Which was like a half a second soundbite.
Yes, which were blown way out of proportion.
Yeah.
But I also listened to some guys talk about the art of it. When you watch, can you see, he's doing that to set that up, to make that happen? Like, is that something that you can see?
It depends how emotional guys are in it, but yeah, for sure. I mean, and especially with groundwork because it's such a more of a thinking thing. But you see some guys that are excellent. You see Holly Holm. You see like the way Anderson would move. And I'm super. I've got a body sensitivity. Like if we're wrestling, if we're grappling, like I can feel what your options are, where you're going to go, and energetically where you can go. I thought you meant
you were ticklish.
But those guys, the strikers, they're body sensitive in a whole nother construct in 720 degrees of movement, right? Mm-hmm. And they're feeling you out without touching you, and that's a different kind of sensitivity. And so those guys, I mean, there's stuff that happens that you can't see, but for sure, I mean, we'd spar like. When you spar with guys a lot, like you'd see Rashad and Keith spar or whatever, or we'd spar, like there'd be very little interaction that happens. But there's a lot going on there because everybody's already moving, countering to that count. Like I can already see where your shoulders go, where you're going to hit me.
That's the crazy thing. You know, I told you before we started this, I sparred first time
in
a boxing ring. And I've never boxed before, but I was talking to Freddie, and he was like, you should come down. I'm going to put you in the ring with Kara. So first of all, here's what nobody told me. 50 seconds in, you're going to be fucking gassed.
Right.
I think a lot of it is whatever.
Not even physical, it's adrenaline.
It's adrenaline. I was fucking gassed, dude. And she hit me 80 times.
Right.
Maybe. Not until I was completely exhausted did it actually slow down enough for me where I could throw a punch.
Sure.
When I actually had energy, my adrenaline was going. But not until I was completely gassed did my shoulders drop.
How many times did she hit you where you didn't know you were being hit? Countless.
50.
And that's the thing is like your eyes get better. But you have to, you've got to go through all that stuff. I'd always say if you'd see, like in wrestling or wherever, anything, if your opponent isn't sweating when they come out, if they're not already wet, they're probably not going to last a round or two.
Really? Why?
Because they haven't warmed up. You got to get that first nut out. You got to get that first adrenaline dump out. You've got to fucking work that till you're exhausted backstage and sweating, and then recover, and then go out and perform.
Okay, so when did you start? What age did you start training?
Probably 27.
So you leave you go to
Michigan. I go to a classical literature program in St. John's College.
Why classical literature?
It's just something that turned me on, man. I'd grown up reading a lot of mythology and early American classics and stuff like that, and that's kind of where I got lost in as a kid. And then this opportunity. I was hospitalized the year before that for overdose, and then I'd hit a car. I was on a bicycle, and I had a pretty good accident that was all just me on a bicycle hitting a parked car, and I ripped my eye open on the. It was like
wait, you're gonna have to explain that.
Just hammered, and I grabbed the bike out of the bar. I was going to a friend's house, and then in Michigan it's all rust. It's like so the car's all rusted, and I don't know exactly what happened, but I was on the ground, and I'd kind of filleted myself open on the rust of the car.
Where, like your side of your body?
Like through here, down through this part of my hand, and here is thick, and then it dicks again here, and then down on my side.
Shit.
And so then I'm in the hospital that night, and then I was hospitalized. And then I went to a drug and alcohol rehab center. And then I was in halfway houses for maybe
Did it
almost
stick?
a year after that.
Did the first
stuck
one
for about
stick?
a year and a half?
Yeah.
About a year or so, and then I was like, I think I got this. I think I'm good, And then I was overdosed 9 days later, and that was in between. I'd already been at St. John's for a while, and then got arrested after that again. And then I was like, my life's got to change. I'm in 5-point restraints, and my mom's looking at me through glass, crying, and I was like, my life, if I ever get another chance again, if there's a window of opportunity, I've got to change my life. And then I just got really, and I got really dedicated to that. And I thought, if there's any life that I'm going to have, it's got to be one rooted in sobriety, because I start drinking, and then I don't make any choices anymore. The drinking makes the choices for me.
Is that about the time where I'd like the person I see now? Because like I said,
Years later.
It
took probably 5 years for me to settle down. I mean, I carried a gun everywhere I went. I was like in sobriety, like I was like, if you guys are here, I know how I feel in my head, and fucking you're probably dangerous as well. So I'm going to protect myself against you. And like, it was a long time. I mean, I don't know, like whatever, that sounds dramatic, but like there's a long time, I think, with a lot of people. And I think that maybe the wallpaper is different, but the carpet's kind of the same in a lot of it. And where we feel like our backs are against the wall. And I think it took years for me to go, well, maybe there's no wall, and maybe everything's okay, and maybe there's nobody to be against here. And when it's you against them, it's like it sets you up in this position where you have to defend something. And one of my teachers, man, he said one of the best things to me ever. His name's Michael Combs, and he said, we're reading a book, and I go, well, what do you think about this? What do you think? We read all these philosophical books and shit. And I said, you got to know about this. He's like a 65-year-old guy, and he goes, kid, I try not to have any answers anymore. He says, every time I got an answer, he says, I got ground I got to defend. I have something I have to be against. And he says, I'd just rather have more questions now, and then the world opens up for me. I thought, man,
that is
and so I just started looking like that,
point of view,
especially when you come through this male ego where you're like, well, I need to know the answer, and if I don't know, that says something about me.
Yeah.
And anymore, it's like, I don't know a lot of answers, but I know a lot of smart people, and I'll find the answer. Like, I'll be straight with you about what I do or don't know, Like, no, I'm nearly retarded, but I know a lot of smart folks.
And that puts me one step above.
Yeah. I mean, at least it's useful, And so now I just go, well, is this, whatever this action is or thought process is it going towards function and performance, or is it not,
Were you still, because what an interesting combination, dude, of what your major was, but a certain level of anger.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Did that?
Sure.
Were you
and survival? I think more than anger, even. I mean,
were you? Did you find yourself amongst your peers who took those classes to be?
Right. I'm a different guy.
A completely different guy.
Fuck. We're reading the Iliad, or we're reading Homer or something, and he's going through and he's talking about like what animals these people are, or how would Ajax do this, or what are they, these whatever. And this one guy transferred from Princeton, and he was talking all this stuff, and he's like, this is barbarism though. This is a different time we've evolved. I go, have we, or is it just different? Like, I mean, still in corporate settings, people smash people, they ruin their lives.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, this is a kind of physical barbarism that just isn't available. It's not necessary anymore, and I would never be a part of it. I go, listen, if there's 5 guys right now that are beating you down in the middle of the street, and I walk up with a bat whistling, you're going to be happy as fuck to see me. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to feel any kind of way at all about it. You're gonna be like, "Oh, Achilles, you're here."
That guy. We like that guy.
And so like we get I think that's part of the problem though, Josh, is that we get into this place where we cleave to comfort as humans, and we'd like to think that we're safe and all that,
right?
And we are. Maybe there's nothing to fear, but there's a lot to look out for, and you should be aware. And that whole idea about comfort is like close to death. Like nothing good comes from being comforted. The more uncomfortable I get, the more I get to grow and I get to push against the chains that are binding me of that comfort.
I always tell my son Jacob, you have got to push yourself out of your comfort zone more. That's when you're going to learn and grow, and you're going to find out who you are. You know who you are doing the things that you already do well. And
that doesn't have to be you have to go and run a marathon
it's
or
not
something.
like he's going to go suck 8 dicks. You know what I mean?
How hard is that?
Yeah.
But you can learn language. Yeah. You can learn music. And I love talking to Ari Shafir about stuff like that. Like he and Greg and I talked one night, and it just stuck with me that no matter what you get excellent at, you understand excellence then of what it is to play a piano, or of what it is to write a screenplay, or what it is to perform a monologue. Like once you understand excellence in one thing, just get good at that thing, and that shit ripples into the rest of your life.
So when you were taking those, and by the way, I agree with that 100%. I also like if you want to be excellent, you got to surround yourself with excellent people.
Certainly.
If you're going to surround yourself with people who are okay with mediocrity, that's where you're going to be. And I don't mean that in a negative way to the people who are in mediocrity.
Or not even mediocrity. Like, what do you think? Like, I've been playing with this idea about, because there's only so much time, right? So how do you expedite your learning or your excellence, as it were? And it almost has to, I think it has to supplant your current friendships. Like if you want to be a doctor and I want to be a lawyer and we're best friends, it's better for you to hang out with other people that want to be doctors and me to and so we don't hang out much anymore. Like that's what I mean by it has to kind of take the place of that. Like if this is the thing, I want to be the best lawyer, we'll get there. You'll get to be a doctor, I'll get to be a lawyer, but it'll be slower and won't be as good. But if you have all kinds of other people that are talking about their doctoral theories and all that around you, and you're all in the learning together, you're going to go farther, faster, better.
Same as comedy for sure.
And all of that, or fighting, or being in an orchestra, or playing baseball. You're not going to hang out with a bunch of basketball players if you're a baseball player. And it kind of the immersion in the thing, it's not the thing that matters, but to be completely immersed in it, I think is of vital importance, and then to be in love with it.
If you want to be great.
If you want to be great.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, I understand. There are people who have told me, I want to do stand-up, and I go, okay, and I go, tell me what your week is like, and they tell me, and I say, do you really want to do stand-up?
Right.
Because it looks like you have no family, you work during the day, but you're only getting on stage twice a week.
Right.
And so when people tell me that, my advice to them is quit.
Yeah.
Quit, and I'm not saying this in a mean way.
It's like what Hemingway said about writing.
Listen, if there are, and I always tell them, when you're out twice a week, just so you know, those other 5 days that you're not out, there are people who have been out, not only the 2 nights you were out, but the 5 days that you're in watching The Voice or doing whatever the fuck. By the way, and no judgment on that.
Nope.
But
you don't want, let's not pretend you want it.
Yes, that's the thing.
I don't care if you don't want to do the thing.
Yeah.
But I do care if you're going to lie and tell me that you want the thing when it's clear that you don't.
Or for me, it's not even that. Like, it's more like, hey, why don't you find the thing you do want to do? Find the thing. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, and I do say this to my son all the time also, try. Try shit you know or you think you know you're not going to like. Because I've done that before and been like, I actually don't mind this.
Right.
Where, you know what I mean? And I always say, you should try to get on stage once, whether it's doing stand-up or even if it's for you karaoke or it's spoken word.
It's all scary.
It's scary as fuck, but you have to do it. I do want to ask you about your time in college in those classes.
Right.
Do you think, and now you may have just answered this question for me,
okay.
Do you think not being around, because I'm sure you were the unicorn in that class.
Right.
Right?
In some ways, yeah. I don't know that they would call it a unicorn.
But do you know what I mean? Yeah. Not as magical.
Sure.
Do you think, who benefited more from you being the unicorn, them or you?
I mean, they did, I would say.
Because you opened up their idea to classical literature in a different way.
Yeah, and it cracked their idea open of... It's easy to judge somebody and go, oh, like if you never met if you never cuddled with a pit bull before, you got an idea what a pit bull's like,
Yep.
and you're reticent to be around it or whatever. And like that's if you're only around golden retrievers, it gives you an idea of satisfaction around that if you're comfortable. But all of a sudden a Rottweiler walks up, you're like, oh, this is a game changer. And then you go, oh no, it's not. He just wants love and connection and all that too, And I think like that kind of stuff is, it's like traveling. It's like what we were talking about, like being, I just went to this thing in Miami, and it was like, it's like everything. The best thing is the communal stuff is like when you get with somebody and you're one-on-one and you go, we're not so dissimilar.
Yes.
And we're here to help each. And that's, jiu-jitsu taught me that. I say this shit all the time. And, that it taught me that where everybody does better, everybody does better. And like it's like if I want to be the best and I control my ego and I go, I need my ego to be the best, and I'm going to triangle you every time. I'm just going to finish you over and over again and smoke you, and I'm never going to show you the setup or anything. I fuck you. I make it harder for you to learn and grow. And I think, yes, my ego is in charge. I'm the winner.
Right.
But I don't even realize I'm so dumb because the ego doesn't care about me getting better. The ego cares about me staying still, staying status quo. Because it makes me not better too. The more I teach you and I teach you all that stuff, well, now I got to find other ways. Okay, you already created a triangle. Now you get to learn other things. So it behooves me to make you better. It's helpful for me to show you everything that I know so that you can compete with me at a level where I need to bring an A game. I need to get innovative. And it's that thing about opulence. Like it's like the opposite of famine thinking.
Yeah.
I have to give you everything so that we can have everything.
Do you find, and somebody told me once with jiu-jitsu in particular, and I found this boxing, by the way, because I was terrible, but the first thing I thought was, I need to do that again. Because one, it was a very humbling experience to just be in there and not only not be in control, but just to be like, oh, I'm sinking.
Sure.
And my first instinct was, oh, this is something I need to do again. The jiu-jitsu mat, somebody had told me before, it is a great equalizer, and it's a great learning place, not just about an art, but really out of all the martial arts that I've talked to people about, they say jiu-jitsu is like a really good life thing. Do you find that to be true?
It's rippled into every part of my life and made my life better everywhere.
What is it about it? Because all people say is they just talk about the benefits more mentally for some people than physically. What is it about jiu-jitsu you think that people aren't saying about Krav Maga or anything like boxing or anything like that?
It's easy to keep your ego safe boxing. I can just say, well, I just want to hit mitts. Or we could go, I'm just going to go 2 minutes. And if you and I go and we touch gloves and we go, okay, we're going to move around for 2 minutes. That's cool. And then the next 2 minutes we go with our next guys. If we do that in jiu-jitsu, somebody's getting strangled. So you're going to get dominated and finished by a guy, right? And so we're not just practicing drills and saying, and Krav Maga is like make-believe, right? It's like, well, if this, I'm going to shove a big pen in his ear and then I'm going to eye gouge. Are you really? Because I'm going to just choke you to death. You know what I mean? Like it becomes a different thing. It's like I know that's nice for Jewish housewives or whatever the thing is sold towards. But if that were awesome, we would see that actualized in the octagon. We would see that amongst people that are making millions of dollars a year.
There's no.
You see jiu-jitsu, you see wrestling, you see a little bit of taekwondo because you're seeing a lot of spinning stuff now. There wasn't, but like Krav Maga is a mixture of like some rough street art kind of stuff, like grab a brick if you can, and not very much control, but like very frenetic, frantic movements, which are the signs of a beginner in jiu-jitsu. And then after the UFC started, and really after the Ultimate Fighter shows started, you started seeing all the kung fu guys and all the Krav Maga guys go, and jiu-jitsu, Israeli jiu-jitsu and shit, which never existed. Like, here's all these things. I'm going to put catchphrases up because I'm a salesman. I'm not really a martial artist. And that's the difference, I think.
Is one of the things about jiu-jitsu, too, that's a great equalizer, and I could be completely
wrong.
Krav
Maga is not great, John Heffron. It is. I love you.
And by the way, I took it for a couple of years, too, and it was great for what I needed it to
It's really great for movies, too.
Yeah,
because it looks great in that way.
Looks great.
Like wushu, I think, is awesome to move in films. Like, I like studying that stuff
Hapkido looks
now.
Good in films?
All that stuff looks great. You know what doesn't look great? Jiu-jitsu. Because it's like, it doesn't.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't in the film.
But it's the best shit.
Do you think one of the reasons it's a great equalizer, and I could be wrong, is that somebody probably 40 pounds lighter than you if they knew what they were doing?
Dude, the first time I did jiu-jitsu, So first I'm working with a group called the Dog Brothers, and Arlen Sanford is my teacher, and he's a Krabi Kabran guy, so that's like a weapons extension of Muay Thai, and that's where I first started fighting was with Arlen, and goddamn, he changed my life in ways that I couldn't even say, and I'm indebted to him to this day and love him and have been blessed that he's back.
Is he one of the guys that helped bring you out of darkness kind of way?
He was one of the first guys that I looked at was not full of shit. Like that was like a mentor. I'm like, here's a tough guy that is well-read, well-spoken, kind, in control of his emotions and his spirit, loving and gracious everywhere, super fucking able in every position. And I thought that's the mark of what a real man is that he has dominion over his spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical self. And he works at those in a ratio every day. And nothing is imbalanced. And I thought, man, that's the kind of balance I would like to look to. He's one of those guys that I look at and I go, and he's seen in real life, in real time, you go, I'd like to be more like that. I could tighten up my shit. And I could be better than I am. And I don't. And I'd really. He was one of the guys I started looking at. And I go, I really want to be better than I am. And he was one of the guys that taught me how to live in the moment. Stick fights taught me that. The stick taught me that. You hear about like Wim Hof. He's like, the cold taught me everything or whatever, right? And it's like like you learn by consequence.
Yeah.
If you're living a life without consequence, I'm fucking sorry for you. And you're weak sauce, man. Like there's no way. I already know that you're not winning. And the higher the consequence, a lot of times the richer the life. Like without that, you can't have it. And for sure, the heightened consequence, like, is death. And so
it also goes back to what we were saying about it. It's risk reward. Like,
sure,
you want to be great, you have to risk great.
Yep, there's a risk, and so
it has to be.
So in that, I see Arlen and I see the sticks, and then I got really grateful, like with this sense of unity. I'm fighting this guy. And it's like there's another entity that surrounds us while we're in it. And I just got, after we were finished, I got this deep sense of gratitude for my opponent because without him, that thing doesn't exist. That feeling I was looking for doesn't exist.
What is with that? So that's interesting. Like the respect that UFC guys have for each other after the fight. You don't see that in basketball or so much in football. And what do you think it is about that? It's one of the things, honestly. And I don't watch it with the same eye that you have. I don't have the trained eye. But one of the things I do love about it the most is at the end of the match, obviously you're selling tickets and you're talking shit and all that stuff. But at the end of the match, when they look at each other, you're like, oh, those dudes respect each other.
Right.
What is it? Why? What is it about the fight?
Fighters only hang out with fighters, really, right? I mean, and when you see them start hanging out with movie stars or you see them hanging out with other people, you go, that's the end of their career. It's become comedy now. We can kind of see that. So there is that.
Where's the respect? Is the respect just because I know what you sacrificed to get here?
We walk the same road.
Yeah, I know how hard it was for me to make it here. Yep. I know. Yeah, when you make a living getting punched in the face.
About comedy.
Yeah.
Do you respect the guy that goes up twice a night? Or you see a guy and he goes up. I remember when I first started hanging out with Joey Diaz, and Joey was like, yeah, I'm going to the Ha Club here, and then I'm in Pasadena later, and then I got a 12-minute spot over on Melrose at this coffee shop. And he's fucking 4 different places in a night, and that's his night. And I go, to go up and talk for 5 or 10 minutes at each place, he's like, yeah, that's what we do, dog.
Yeah.
It's training.
Yeah.
And then he would go on the weekend and he'd make money. He'd do all that shit for fun and for free. And then all these cocksuckers that are out there like, I'd do whatever, but I'm worth something. And it's like, they don't have any idea, like this whole, like, it sounds so trite now to say like a millennial, but like that kind of thing, man, everybody I know that kills it, they do everything for free.
Dude.
Everything. And then they go, and then they work 1 day a week or whatever. But that doesn't mean that they're not sweating balls and frustrated and want to quit life all the time. And they're pushing against that.
You have to.
God damn, it's beautiful. And so it's the same thing for you. If you're going to hang out with guys, it's not going to be the guy that's going up on stage twice a week pretending he's a comic, because you're like, you don't merit that, bro. You haven't earned it. Mm-hmm. You haven't earned what I've done. And that's part of it, I think.
Two questions. One, how did you get so deep? Because you are, for somebody who isn't a comic, you are pretty entrenched in the comedy community.
Yeah, I love it.
Like, and by the way, what you're talking about is why I respect guys like Joe Rogan so much. Joe Rogan does not need to be at the Comedy Store 5 nights a week practicing shit. Joe Rogan, actually would never has to go to the Comedy Store again if he wants to. His podcast could drive every ticket. He could sit on his laurels.
He wouldn't have to do anything
ever. It's guys like him and Bill Burr who I see. I'm like, these guys are out 5 nights a week, 6 nights a week, practicing shit.
It's not even being out that is impressive to me, because if you go out and you're like, I got a home run every night,
but they don't do their home run every night.
But they don't ever do it. They go out there and suck dicks on stage,
practice.
And they go, here's my shit I haven't worked out, and you're not gonna laugh.
Yep.
They don't say that out loud, but that's generally sometimes what happens.
Yes.
And you're like, that's bravery. And what really turned me on most Josh, about comedy is Brian Reichel was doing a show. I forget the name. I wish I knew the little restaurant. It was down on Melrose. And he did an open micer thing, and then he'd have, and then guys like Joe and stuff would come down and do a spot at the end to fill the show up. Mm-hmm. Just like, talk about, he doesn't have to do that. But I would go there early and I'd watch these open micers, man. There'd be 4 of us sitting in the stands, and like the lights are on. They can't see anybody there. And you watch a guy burn under the lights for 90 seconds. And you're like,
yeah. Oh, it's a long 90 seconds, dude.
That's the bravest motherfucker I ever saw.
It's a long 90. Now, how did you get into the comedy world?
So that's why I respect it, because I see that.
How did you get into it, and have you ever hopped on stage?
I got into it because of jiu-jitsu. I was working on The Longest Yard, and then
with Joey Diaz.
Yeah, that's where I met Joey. I met Joey before I knew Joe and Ari and all them. I met Joey in New Mexico. I thought he was going to die. He was rapping Ready to Die. He was rapping Biggie Smalls.
How heavy was he? He had to be 380 during that film.
I'm getting chlorophyll drinks for him and all types of shit. He's like, oh, bro, I'm just going to go burn a number right now. And I'm like, that might be the last number you take, bro. Like, fuck, it's 95 degrees. It is dry as shit, and you're at 7,000 feet.
Dude, let me tell you something. There were many times where I was like, there's no way he lives till tomorrow. But I've since changed that tune and think he's going to outlive everybody.
Like Keith Richards.
Yes, exactly. Like there was a time when Joey called me, and I don't know if he's ever told anyone this story. I think he probably has. He's an open book. He calls me, hey Doug, what's up? He was like, come get me. I need to go into rehab. Come get me. And I was like, I go, what's going on? Dude, he had never mentioned rehab a second in his life. I'd known him for years. And, and this is back, you remember when his skin, like there were sores? Like
how about when he was growing a head out
on his shoulder? Oh, he had the fucking fat bubble on his neck? Oh, my God, right?
It's not even funny. It was frightening as fuck.
Okay, but he calls me, and he's like, hey, Doug. I'd never heard it in his voice. I don't want to say it was fear, but he was nervous. Got to come get me. I got to go into rehab. I'm not going to live like this. And I was like, fucking, where are you? And he goes, let me call you back in 5 minutes. I go, okay.
Oof, that's a long 5.
Yeah, he called me back in 5 minutes. He was like, I'm fine. I'm like, what happened? Uh-huh. I go, what happened over the 5 minutes? He's like, nah, I think I'm fine. It's going to be all right. And I was like, let me come get you. He's like, no, everything's going to be good. But there was times that was around that time, The Longest Yard, where I was like, oh, he's going to die. Like, yeah. And I've asked him before, did you think you'd see 50? And he was like, no.
Yeah.
No way. But he put his body through. So did you.
Tested it.
Yes, but he did it way later in life, and with his body type. Yeah. He wasn't the epitome.
He didn't look resilient.
No.
He doesn't. But now I look at him, I'm like,
strong as a fucking bull, that guy.
Yeah.
How did you get?
And I think that those windows like that, guys peek that window open. I never say shit, guys. I get those calls.
Yeah.
And I go, and we talk it through, and I talk about what my thing has been and all that, and I go, hey, here's another. I'm like, I said, I can see the future too, dude. And I go, what's gonna happen is you're gonna feel way better tomorrow, the next day, and then you're gonna be like, fuck, I snitched on myself to Tait, and I said this shit to him, and I outed myself, and you're gonna feel fucking bad about that. And then what's gonna happen is you're gonna get weird around me. And you're we're not gonna be friends in the same way, and you're gonna be a little awkward, and it'll be a fucking elephant that's always fucking right there. And I said, so what I'm gonna do after we hang up, if you call me tomorrow and we want to do something, cool. But if not, I'm never mentioning the conversation again. It's as if this never happened. Just so you know, we're gonna clear this slate right now, and because oftentimes, especially with coke guys.
Yes.
They don't fucking, they get paranoid, and it's heart fucking whatever, all the stuff that happens. I go, oh my God, this is that. And I go, yeah, we're just having a big weekend right now, bro. We'll get through this, and I don't want to have I don't want to have a weird thing with you later, you know.
I'm so happy that I never liked Coke. I did a bunch of it, like I'm no quitter, but I you know, and I would do it with Joe, but it just made me shut up and sit in a corner.
Really?
I couldn't talk. It made me, it turned me inwards, and so I never liked it, and I'm so glad I never liked it because. I watched people try to. By the way, I've watched people try to get off of it, and you know, I've quit. I don't really drink, but I chewed tobacco forever and ever and ever, and I've had to quit some other stuff. You know, the hardest thing I ever had to quit was sugar.
Yeah, that's integral. You know,
Dude,
I was just talking to a doctor.
It was brutal.
One of my friends he's got like 5 kids, and he one of them had like a heart thing, and they did a surgery as an infant. Mm-hmm. It's like 3-week-old baby or something, right? And afterwards, they're in the hospital, and he goes, oh, he's really uncomfortable. The baby's crying and everything. And he takes a dropper, and he drops it on the baby's tongue. Baby chills out, and he goes, well, so what was in the dropper? And he goes, oh, just a pain reliever. And he goes, yeah, but what was it? Like, is that liquid OxyContin, or what do we got going on? And he goes, it's just, it's like a high fructose deal. And they said that'll hit the same receptors as morphines and things like that. And it's just because he says all those are distractions, and that's what sugar is. And then you look at the abundance of sugar that we just push in our bodies all the time. It's no surprise that we're the most diabetic country there is.
Dude,
you know?
Did you see that documentary where they showed the brain react to a line of Coke and react to drinking a Coca-Cola? It sets off the same chemical reaction.
There's a dude that drank 12 Cokes every day. Here, he worked in Kansas, and then his job moved him. He was in Mexico City.
Yeah.
He drank 12 Cokes every day, Mexico City, real cane sugar in their Cokes and all that. But it didn't have the same glycemic spike for him because it's high fructose corn syrup we use here to such a degree that he went into a diabetic shock and had to be hospitalized in Mexico City to get his blood shit right. Like it's crazy. Anyway.
I will tell you, dude. Like for me, that was the hard because I'm a big weed guy.
Yeah.
And nobody ever gets high and be like, hey, man, where are the almonds? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm not like, I need some fucking unsalted cashews right now.
Right.
I used to pour 3 bags of Skittles into a bowl.
Awesome.
And of each kind, the tropical, the sour, and the regular. And I would pour them in.
Just to surprise you?
Like, yeah, and I'd mix it up, and I'd sit in my bed with my wife, and I'd eat it, and she'd look at me, and she'd be like, you are fucking so gross right now. I'm like, yeah, I'm so happy. But I would just eat them.
Did it make you gassy?
Sugar, I'm gassy in general. Like, I'm the Dutch oven.
Some people would say that's a diet thing.
I'm a Dutch oven king. My wife, like, she hates it. Like, when we'll get into a car, if we're going on a road trip, the first thing she'll say is, unlock the windows. Because she knows right away my first move is to lock that window.
Rude.
Oh, rude. Because this is what I want to hear from her. This is what I want to hear. Unlock the fucking window.
Oh, my God. What a good lady.
Yeah, she's the best, man. When did you get into acting and why?
Okay.
Because you leave school at how old?
I don't know.
20.
Yeah, early 20s. 22.
And then what makes you want to get into acting?
I got it. I worked in nightclubs. I worked in construction jobs, and then I was working this one nightclub, and all these dudes come in, and they're like, "Hey, we needed some big white boys for this film."
Out here or in New Mexico?
It was in New Mexico in Santa Fe, and it was Master P and his crew of guys from No Limit Records.
Oh yeah!
And so we went and filmed a prison movie, and that was where I got a SAG card, and I got into that, and then I met this guy Keith Willard, and Keith was a great guy. He was a Navy SEAL and a BUDS instructor, and he was the stunt coordinator on thing. And there's all kinds of shit, and they're just like, just do everything. Like it was like a kind of a no rules film, and they're like, we're going to pay you as a SAG feature for the days that you are interacting with the principal or that you have some action or something. But otherwise, we're just going to pay you as a background extra. And, you know, for people listening, that's the difference between like $800 a day and $80 a day or whatever. And then I go, okay, I don't know anything. I'm like, fucking cool, man. I get to make fucking $800 a day a couple of days this week. That's fucking more than I make in the month anyway or whatever. And then somebody called SAG and they go, you can't do that. And then I got fucking a check for like $12,000 from SAG, and I was like, oh, awesome! Like they just fucking. I was like, that's great.
I like this.
But
job.
I did a high fall in that. I did a bunch of fights.
High fall, like what?
Like I did. Well, I was 3 tiers up in a prison cell, and I get thrown off the edge of it onto a picnic table.
Had you been trained?
No, man. And so we just did all this shit. And
Wait, don't skate over that, brother.
Well,
so you're 3 floors up, and someone says, "Can you fall 3 floors?" And you say yes.
Yeah, I'm like, well, let's do it. Like, how are we gonna do it? And then we put boxes up and everything like that, and they,
Yeah, but
so you just fall back into it. But I had just started maybe 6 months before that doing a lot of grappling.
Yeah.
And so I'm into the sport, and we're doing judo and all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, how fucking hard can that? Like, how hard can it be? You know? And so part of it would get kicked off. I'm in a harness and hanging there, and then when I get kicked off, and then they do other shots.
Yeah.
Of it, you know, and then we go down to the bottom, and then I do the fall onto the picnic table, which is steel, and that was the worst part, falling like 6 or 8 feet off a ladder to flat back onto a steel picnic table.
Yeah, dude, that sounds terrible.
Had no idea. I was new. I was like, I'm making great.
How many times did you have to do it?
I just did that one time, I think. No, I maybe did it twice. But the first time I didn't tuck my chin enough. I almost knocked myself out. Like an idiot. And then Keith says, hey, dude, why don't you come out and stay at my guest house in L.A.? I go, yeah, I only have to have this one job here. I'm doing this fucking wrestling thing I really like and whatever. And I said, I'm just going to do this. And so I did that. And then that, went into, years, 3 or 4 years later, that went into my first pro fight and all that. And I just never really thought about film again. And I did one commercial. I did like a Nissan commercial. And then I found out about residuals for 7 years, 8 years. 8 years as a professional, and then like years before as on submission circuit. I'd fought in the Worlds and the Pan Ams a bunch of times, jiu-jitsu, and hundreds of stick fights, like hundreds. Yeah, I wouldn't know how to quantify it really.
When you go into a ring with a fight with jiu-jitsu,
right?
Okay,
jiu-jitsu.
So that's what you were fighting, right? You were fighting, or was it MMA?
No, I fought mixed martial arts.
Mixed martial arts. So when you go into that,
the last time I fought in a jiu-jitsu match, I was a brown belt, I guess, and then I just fought mixed martial arts since then.
When you're fighting MMA and you get in the ring, how? This is going to sound like the stupidest question of all time. Well, at what point do you get used to people punching you in the face? Is that a dumb question?
You slap hands with them.
Really?
Yeah, you're happy. Yeah.
You're ready.
Yeah.
That first fight,
it's all nervous all the way up until then.
Yeah.
The shitty part about fighting, and everybody thinks they'd be a great fighter, is because they think like the way a fight pops off in a bar. If somebody fucking slaps you in the face, steps on your toes, fucking spills your beer.
Yeah.
People are ready to fight right now. Oh, this is happening right now. Good. And they show up because they're there. It's happening. But like to premeditate a fight is a different thing. And like to be thinking about it every day, and this is what's going to happen. Then I have to be at all these different parameters. I got to be at this kind of weight, trying to keep my headspace right, my home life together, everything else. It's a different kind of battle.
But is it kind of like, I've heard football players say, I want to get hit that first time.
Yeah, I know guys that are slow starters that are like, I got punched in the face. But then I see guys that are slow starters that get punched in the face that one time. Like, fuck, man, Keith, he was so ready to fight Wanderlei Silva, and we trained hard for that fight. And Wanderlei knew that Keith liked the leg kick, and so he left his leg out. And right when Keith went to leg kick him, he jumped and threw a right hook and fucking hit Keith behind the ear, and that was the end of the fight.
It's crazy.
And so that happens. Like if you're a slow starter like that, like that happens too. But being hit in the face isn't so bad. You know what I mean? I mean it's not. It's nothing. It's a non.
I will tell you that for some people, the last fight I ever got into.
When was that?
I was in Seattle, so that had to be 94, 96. I got hit once here in the forehead, and then I got hit once here in the back of the head because I get hit in the forehead, and I was like, I don't like this. And I turned to one, get the fuck out of here, and he hit me one more time in the back of the head, and I was like, this isn't going to be my game. I'm not good at this. I've told this before, and people who know me know this. My fight record, we'll call it 4-8. I was never good. I was never good. I had 3 older brothers, and I was the youngest. So
that's got to be training right there.
Shit talk is my That's my wheelhouse. I'm also not good at saying if someone goes walk away. I'm not good at that either.
Right.
Because I was raised
that
like that. You're not. That's going to make you a bit of a bitch. So you're going to have to take the punch if you ask for it.
Right.
And so but I just never, for me, I enjoy the no.
I took a good beating like that. I was in 5th grade, I think it was, and the Dietrichs, they lived across the street, next to the O'Donnells. It's like the Irish mafia across the street from my house, and they were all like, the O'Donnells had 9 kids, and the Dietrichs had 16 kids, and there were all these Irish Catholic families. And so I'm walking home from school, and Paul Dietrich, he was in the middle somewhere, and he was probably 4 or 5 years older than me, and I called him a pussy or motherfucker him or something like that, and he goes, oh, yeah? And I go, yeah, fuck you. And he's like, take that back or whatever it is, and he comes over, and I don't even know if he socks me or just puts me down.
Yeah.
But I'm down. It's an icy sidewalk, banks on either side, and whoever's driving by is just seeing a guy sometimes coming up, and he can't see me at all. Just him punching me in the face over and over again. Are you done? Fuck you, motherfucker. Are you done? And he must have hit me 100 times. And I go, and I'd struggle, and I'd like, after a while, you just go, I guess this isn't going to get different, maybe ever. And I got to wait till he gets tired. And so then I was like, okay, I'm done. And then I you just thank God for all those lessons. I'm glad all the times I got beat up, I'm so happy.
I got beat up once in a bar in Texas. This guy was talking a lot of shit, and I was, usually what happens in the bar and why I would get beat up is because if you're going to start talking shit to me, I'm usually going to be funnier than you.
Right. Make you feel stupid. That's what the Hawaiians would say, too.
And that's when I lose because they're generally going to be able to fight better than I am.
Yep.
And I can't back down. So there was this guy, and he was bigger than me, and I said something, and the girl he was with.
Oh, a girl adds to that fire.
Laughed in his face. Oh. And he stood up, and I was like, oh, well, here we go. And I'm standing there, and he was so big where I was like, I'm going to have to hit this dude first. If I've got a fucking shot, I'm going to have to load up with whatever I've got. I came from down here. Dude, I hit this dude solid. And I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I'm a grown-up.
But, if you hit a golf ball, and you're like, ooh, that was a good swing.
Yes!
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm a grown-up. I should be at least this will be a starter. And I hit him as hard as I could on the jaw, and it turned his head. It didn't even knock his cowboy hat off. And he turned back, and he goes, son, you're going to have to do better than that. And I was like, oh, fucking
so
no.
So good.
Dude, he beat me up as he was talking to me.
Right.
So he would hit me. He was like, let me tell you something. Oh, it was like, I don't remember most of the beating, but it was a fucking ass kicking.
That's awesome.
My friends, who I put friends in quotation because none of them really jumped in.
Right.
Later, when I asked them, like, nobody jumped in, they were like, did you see the size of that dude? I was like, yeah, I fucking did.
And he went home with the girl anyway?
He went home with the girl, and it did not work out well for me. Do you?
Yeah.
You don't have kids?
No.
If you had, where do you stand? This is a better question. In general, for me, my rule with my kids was always, hey, listen, a bully understands a punch in the mouth.
Right.
So, and I know there's this whole use your words, and it's a big thing to say to kids now, use your words.
Right.
I'm of the belief that sometimes you got to use your hands. Do you believe that also?
Sure. I think you ought to be good at it all. I think it's disgraceful not to be. But I think about it like my dog. I got this dog, Hank.
It's a great name for a dog, by the way.
He was named after, Hank Moody. But Hank was like, Hank is a dick. He's like a bully. And he's probably like Catahoula hound, pit bull. I found him wandering in the desert in New Mexico. He's all sucked up, emaciated. And anyway, then we got to be friends. And he stuck around, and he's been here for a long time. But he'll go up and he'll run up on any dog, and he'll see what you do. And if you're like a really nice golden retriever, a lot of those dogs are like, my move is to fall to my back and wag my tail and hope that you like me. You know?
Yeah.
And if you're that guy, Hank stands over you, growling and menacing you until you piss straight up in the air. And then he's satisfied and he walks off. Now, if he runs up on you and you're a Chihuahua, and you just look at him and you don't even have to growl. But if you do, maybe added benefit. But if you just look like you're going to be any kind of threat at all, he's like, oh, cool. They're owning their ground and cool. And he goes on and does his thing. And I think that's kind of the thing that you'd want to teach any animal is that own the ground that you're on. You deserve it. Like, you merit it. There's no reason that you shouldn't feel like safe in where you are. Like, I think that's important. We teach people that. And maybe you get knocked down, but for sure own your ground. And if you do own your ground, the chances of you running into somebody that's going to try to push you over are slimmer than if you were just going to acquiesce.
Right, because if we use your dog as an example,
Sure.
or if you put your dog in people, they're always going to look for the one that rolls on their back and pisses straight in the air.
Yep.
There always are. The bully is always going to look for that person.
And then everybody else, no matter how, that goes back to your question about like, if you're a skilled fighter, why do you fight less or whatever? Nobody wants to. We already know who we are, and we all know that we're in a communal effort here to get by, and life's hard enough. And people with an elevated thought process, I think, are thinking, I want everybody to do well. And the only time I'm going to be physical is if it's to settle somebody down that is maybe going to hurt the tribe in some way.
When did this gentler you come through, and why?
I think it's always been that way. I've always been like a protector. The first fights I was in was always against bullies.
Right.
The first time I got beat up, I was, I think, in kindergarten. It was the first time I walked to school by myself. And my cousin is a bad motherfucker. He's like 10 years older than me. Went on to be a Force Recon Marine at 16 or 17 years old.
Stop it. Went
in early. And he just couldn't handle life the way it was set out. And he went in and changed his life. But before that, Spence was a bad motherfucker. And so these guys are like, Tait Fletcher, you related to Spence? I go, oh, that's my cousin. I'm like all proud.
Yeah.
And like, oh, awesome story. Wop, wop, wop. and so those are the crossing guards, like 5th or 6th graders beat me up, right? I have no idea whatever happened. I never asked Spence about it. And then I walked to school. But like, since then, I'm like, there's people like that. And you see that kind of thing. And I think there's an innate thing in people where you want justice, where that's like, we talk about these inalienable rights. And I believe that like justice is one of those things that doesn't really exist.
Justice doesn't exist?
No, only in to the degree that we push it. I mean, like today's Martin Luther King Day, and I look at that and I think about that too. And I think, those are guys, you look at Martin Luther King and Malcolm X,
yep.
They're kind of contemporaries, right? But you look at like Jackie Robinson, that's like 20 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's really, you could hang a black guy and completely get away with it right in front of everybody. Mm-hmm. Like, nobody gave a fuck. And like,
dude, that's not so long ago.
Not at all. That's so when I look back in history, and when I made a post on Instagram today about like soldiers wear all kinds of different outfits. And guys like that, like if I'm in the Army, I just left a friend of mine, and he was a SEAL Team 6 guy, and that's all, everything is great. Like, and I admire all that stuff. However, for a guy like Martin Luther King or like Jackie Robinson, you're alone, man. It's not like you have a platoon of guys or like guys next to you. I mean, guys that I know that fight in the military, they're fighting for the guys next to them. They don't give a fuck about democracy. Nobody cares. Nobody's a democratic representative in the world. They don't care about that. That's not what we're doing. Just like the guys in China are not communists. But those guys, man, that stood there inside and they say, I'm going to get served at this cafe, or I'm going to drink from this water fountain. And they're alone.
Yeah.
In a societal segregated place where it's completely acceptable for people to come up with bats and beat you to death if you're the wrong skin color. It's completely acceptable to sick dogs that have been trained to hurt people on children and women. It's completely acceptable to throw your wife down who's 9 months pregnant and kick her until she loses the baby if she's black and in a peaceful protest somewhere. That's completely acceptable not long ago. And so those kinds of people, for me, it makes anything else, whether it's Vietnam era shit or whatever, look almost posh in comparison. Because here's a guy with dignity standing there in a suit and tie that is articulate, well-spoken, and he's simply asking for, can I please not be thought of negligibly in this society?
I was thinking about this today, dude.
That's crazy.
I was thinking about this. I agree with you. I was thinking about this today and MLK. And I was thinking about that exact same thing. Would I have had the balls to walk into a diner with 3 of my friends in college, these college kids are 4 of your friends, knowing not only was I not going to get served, and not only was I going to get the shit beat out of me, but the people who they were going to call to come stop the people from kicking the shit out of me.
They want to hang me too.
How, and that's the thing, like,
It's remarkable in a way that I don't have words for.
I agree with that. The level of, and I don't know if brave is even the right word. You are setting out as these 3 or 4 people to try to change the world. What?
Maybe because you have a kid. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe you're going, I'm willing to die right here, and I'm willing to have the skin stripped from me while I'm alive so that maybe my son can sit in a chair. Or whatever the thinking is. I don't know what that bravery is, but it makes me shake to think of because I feel, I feel like a coward because I go, would I have stood up? Would I have done that?
Yeah.
You know?
It also, honestly, perspective, everybody.
It's easy to stand up for that guy. It's easy for me to be a white guy in the
Now it
diner.
is.
Or even then, to be a white guy in the diner and stand up because you're not going to hang me. And go, no, man, let him fucking eat or whatever. That's the easy thing.
But to be that
guy,
come on.
I can't even imagine. And so then I think about today in this world, we got to try harder too, because the other thing is that I know people that they want to think of themselves as racist people, and I don't want to call them racist as if that's a name or something to call somebody like, but there's a great book out called Blind Spots, which you should read. But like the thing is that if we're not present to the idea that a friend of mine and I got in an argument about, he says, well, we don't live in a racist society. We don't live in a racist country. How great is that? And I go, we don't. I go, where do you live?
Yeah.
I go, because if we're going to look at the differences in populations of black and white in America, and then we're going to look and juxtapose that overlay it on the prison population, it's starkly fucking different.
Yes.
And so that either means that you think that black people are deficient in some way and are unable to live in a regular society, which is fucking racist.
Yeah.
Or you're agreeing with me that we're in a racist society, that there's a setup.
Yeah, there's a huge setup. I work with a group of kids, and up at every Christmas we bring them stuff and presents, and they're from East LA and South Central, and actually some from bad parts of the Valley. And they're kids from like 14 to 17, and they've had tough upbringings, and parents in jail or taken out of gangs. And there was one kid up there, dude, who had filed all of his teeth down to look like Dracula teeth.
Right.
All of them. Like, these kids are like, and I wasn't for a long time. I was like, Beth, my wife would like to come up, and they're like, no women. Like, it's not, they were some rough kids.
Pretty raw.
And as what dawned on me, two things really struck me. One, that life that I'm describing of fucking chiseling down your teeth and no parents and living on is 10 miles from here.
Right.
I was like, wait, this is not like some removed, this is fucking 10 miles from here.
A couple different choices. Those are your kids.
Yes. Okay. The other thing that dawned on me was these kids, okay, when people will say, well, you shouldn't use your environment as an excuse, so you're talking about kids who with no parents, no role models. A lot of these kids, when we bring them gifts every Christmas, do you know what? I get thank you letters from all of them. And usually over 50% will say something like, nobody's ever given me a present before. I don't know how to respond. Thank you so much.
It's weird. You're a little weird for this.
Dude, yeah. No birthday, no Christmas present, 15-year-old person, right?
Yeah.
What dawns on me.
I had a guy do that to me, and then he's like, my family doesn't do this, so it's odd, but
crazy.
I appreciate the gesture, but I don't know.
But they were like taken aback. So these kids, they lived on the streets. They do what they have to do to survive. The system forgets about them because they're not cute and cuddly. You're not a 4-year-old anymore. You're not. Nothing's as cute as an Asian baby. You know what I mean? So they're not cute and cuddly. They're tatted up. They're fucked up. And then when they're 18, the state no longer looks out for you, and they go, now go live. And now they make some mistakes, and we want to blame them? Well, don't tell me we haven't set them up to fail. Right. We've set them up to fail, and when they fail, then we go look at the fucking black people.
Well, then also,
it's terrible.
I think that the other aspect of that is like we look at things and as if we all want to live peacefully and wholly together, and that's not what I think we have an out of control capitalistic regime kind of that takes us in America now, and I'm a capitalist, but too. Like I'm one with the heart, and I feel like the way it is like right now that setup is great for this kind of regime that I'm speaking of, because I'm going to totally have people to feed into this system. It's kind of like when Rogan talks about stuff, he's like, well, you know, Colorado's killing it with the taxes now and all that kind of stuff on the weed and all that kind of thing. And I go, it'll never be a overall legal thing unless they can, they'll doctor it. If Pfizer and Upjohn and those guys start making weed, that'll be the thing. And then you'll see the first deaths from weed. But if there's 10 of us in the room, Joe, and there's you and Josh that smoke weed and the other 8 of us don't smoke weed, is it more enriching to tax you two and to let everybody else out that's in prison from weed-related issues? Or is it better to keep it illegal and tax all of us to keep you criminals in jail? And like that's where the rub is. The DEA, all components of the FBI, components of every sheriff, city, and state police office, they've got a drug enforcement aspect to that. And all of that stuff is taxed to the public. It's like when there's a natural disaster and we got to send in somebody to clean up the Gulf from Halliburton. Well, fuck, that's the taxpayer burden. And so that's the rub. We're all prisoners in that way.
Absolutely.
They don't want the betterment is my point. They don't want those kids to succeed. They want those kids in prison.
100%. It's better. And like we used weed as an example. I remember I talked to a guy maybe a couple weeks ago. We were talking about weed and it should be illegal. And I go, well, tell me why it should be illegal. And he was like, well, it's bad for you. I'm like, well, then we're going to outlaw cigarettes, right?
Right.
And he was like, no. And I go, well, they're bad for you.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, but there's cigarettes. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And so it's not
you
about.
You need a new argument.
Exactly. When the government tells me we're going to outlaw it because it's bad for you.
Yep.
That is the biggest single lie.
It's a red flag.
Because then take away my booze.
Tell me about Budweiser.
Yeah.
Tell me about drunk driving deaths and tell me about cigarettes.
Tell me about
domestic violence from alcohol.
Oh, and fucking tell me about the Big Mac that you're okay with your kid eating.
All of that.
So don't tell me that you're outlawing something because it's
like with
bad
steroids when they talk about like that knucklehead Nowitzki or whatever that works for the UFC now. He works for USADA. And he's like, yeah, because it's bad examples for kids. And I'm like, you got to not use that narrative because that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's so that they won't get sued anymore by people that are saying you don't care about putting me against a guy that's on steroids. And so now they up their testing. That's all that is. It's a money game.
Absolutely. And you're 100% right. If the pharmaceutical companies could figure out how to monopolize weed, it would be legal tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow.
Well, they're gonna.
Well, they can't. The problem is, dude,
they're going to outlaw growers.
But I can't grow. Well, that's the thing. They'll have to do that because I can't grow Vicodin in my backyard. I tried. It doesn't work. I took a pill and I planted it. Nothing fucking. I thought
Killed the grass.
I thought I'd get a little Vicodin tree. I didn't get shit. Okay, so I can't make that here. I need Merck. I need Pfizer. I don't need them for the weed. And that is, I think, is where we're going to come.
Until you do.
Until I do.
And like that, we don't need farmers for the corn or the wheat or whatever until Monsanto. And now we don't need them because they made strains of seeds that they call the Terminator strains, right?
Yeah.
Where they die after they're not a seed that regenerates its biology.
Yeah.
Like it's one season, now you got to buy it from us again. And so they're bending the farmers over in that way. And pretty soon there's just none of it. And that'll happen with weed too, for sure.
It'll take, I think.
They said 5 years they put a moratorium on it before big corporations can get into the weed game in California.
5 years?
5 years. And 5 years for them, so what?
I think in a decade, this country will change dramatically because there will be a generation of old white people who will eventually just end up dying.
Sure.
And I think that's going to change things socially a lot. I think even the younger conservative folks don't hold on to the astringent, socially conservative views as some of the older ones.
But there's a trick that happens, though. And what's this trick? Where the GOP has got, where you've got a guy like Trump who's born a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy with an old beat-up pickup truck in the middle of Iowa or whatever is like, that's my guy because he speaks my language.
Yeah,
just because he doesn't read books and I don't read books either, so I guess we're the same. Like, it's crazy. So these people that are looking for more responsibility, that feel like they've been just cast aside by the country and by all these liberal fucks on either side and all these dumb actors over here and the rich people on the East Coast and worse for the regular man. And so a guy that is beholden to all the Wall Street banks says, I'm against all these banks. What are you doing over here, Hillary? And then they're like, yeah, that's our guy. He said that stuff. And I kind of don't like Mexicans either. So, I mean, it's fucking amazing. So I make $20,000 a year, and I'm the same as this billionaire.
That's crazy to me that people relate to him like that. And that to me was the biggest part. Like, he's just like me. No,
I think the greatest thing is he could get arrested before he gets inaugurated. Like, this could be a thing.
it wouldn't matter.
It's all going down though, because for sure he's got the audacity where he's going to do criminal shit and be like, I'm above that.
Oh, I do think he'll be impeached at some point in time in this, and I don't think he cares. Yeah. Honestly, I really do. And I think Pence would probably be happier, and I think
the GOP would be happier because Pence is more controllable.
I think so. That's what I think.
But I also don't think it matters.
Well, I think what people forget is that if you really want to change your life, vote locally.
Right.
Vote.
Well, that's what the whole thing is.
And people forget. They think the vote is every 4 years. It is not.
It's every day you spend $1.
Yes.
It's every dollar
vote
you spend.
locally. And I encourage people also, man, spend locally. Spend on your small businesses. I know Walmart and it's cheaper, but if you can, even if there's one thing where you're like, I can buy this.
But it's a short run, and it's a short run cheaper because the cost. I mean, when you look at the cost of healthcare costs, and you look at what cost is as far as like how many people are employed, how wages have gone down in your community, like it all costs. Like there's no free lunch here. Like Walmart's not a savior. It's a cancer.
Yeah,
and like those things that go on, I've got a podcast called Pirate Life Radio, and like Keith and Lacey and I started Caveman Coffee kind of around these nutrition talks.
Wait, are you Caveman Coffee guy?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
Yeah. So it's
good coffee, by the way, brother.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We began that kind of under that kind of an idea about pirate your life back, about your life has been subjugated by these, but we have a government that's a shadow of corporations at this point, and so. Under that vein, I'm like, we just started talking a lot about buying local, about being connected to your people, about knowing who your neighbor is. And that kind of, it spoke to coffee and sustainability and
that is so important. It's so important to act locally. And I agree with you 100%.
Because otherwise we feel impotent.
Yeah.
Otherwise we feel like, well, it's like that thing, that big lie that everything causes cancer. That's just not true. And now you're putting yourself under a narrative that isn't successful.
But dude, so for me, and this is why, and I do follow you on social media, dude, and I love how you're positive. You're positive. But as I
love your high walks.
I appreciate it, dude. As an addict, that positive energy, that's not where it's coming from. Where does the overwhelming positive outlook come from, dude? Because for some people it's hard to generate.
Yeah.
And for me, this is where it is for me, and I'll let you think about that question for a second.
Sure.
For me, it's just not only is it more productive. My view is this: I'm on this rock one time, so I get to choose how I want to spend my day. Do I want to spend my day thinking about what other people have and what I don't have and why this didn't happen to me and how come I'm not here? Or do I want to spend this 24 hours, which I'll never get back ever again, doing something that I like, doing something, walking my dog, having lunch with my wife, instead of talking about the things that I can't do, trying to put into action the things that I know I can do. I've always said to people, and this is, I think, a starter kit for people when they go, well, I can't get started. I always say, do 3 things for yourself every day. Write a list. Make sure you check off those 3 things. You will start to empower yourself and feel good about yourself. And when you do 3 things for yourself every day, I know a lot of people think this is hippy dippy shit. I believe in energy. You start to get energy in your life pushing towards something that you want. But when you're constantly saying what you don't have, guess what? You're never going to get that. That's what you're bringing on yourself.
Sure.
Do you believe that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that seems great. I love that 3 things thing too.
Dude, it's so, for people who are just starting, I lived in an apartment when I raised my 3, I was single, raising my 3 kids. I made less than $1,000 a month. I lived in one room.
And a traveling comic.
At the time, I was not traveling because I couldn't, right? So, but I had to, it was hard. There were 2 things. I put a sign up on my one. We had one room, all of us, but I put a sign up on the wall that said, "Keep your legs moving." That was my way of I never wanted life to push me backwards. Now, as long as my legs were moving, I may not go forward, but life wasn't going to push me backwards anymore. I had decided when I put that up on my wall, this was as far back as I was going.
Right.
And so I know people think this is stupid shit, but that visualizing it and seeing it every day makes for me, made a huge difference. And then I was like, I'm going to do 3 things every day. And as soon as I started doing that, dude, I started doing that in July, and I was dead in the water as far as this business. By December, I was out of that room in a house on the hills. I had put together a one-man show. I had gotten a television deal. I didn't buy a house on the hills, everybody, and I rented a house I couldn't afford. But I was like, fuck it. We are not living in this fucking room another single day. Yeah. But I do attribute that to just changing my point of view. I made myself a victim for so long.
Right.
That when you have a victim's mentality, you're never going to achieve
One of my greatest teachers said, a victim will never recover, Tate.
Ever. Yeah. And so it was when I look back, I wasn't any funnier in July or in December than I was in July. I wasn't a better comedian. But I had changed my outlook, and I had changed the energy that was circling around me, and it just sent me down a different road. Right. And so for me, that's what it was. I remember it was a huge shift instead of why me, why am I here in this fucking room?
Yeah.
I shifted it into more like, I can do this. This is just where I am. It's not who I am.
There was a homeless guy that helped me a lot with that.
Is that true?
Yeah. I was living over at 3rd and Poinsettia, and there was a homeless guy that went to the Ralph's across the street, and he would stay there outside, and he's a tall, good-looking guy, probably 60 years old, clean and everything, and say, hey, how you doing? He goes, oh, man, I'm blessed today, man. How are you? It's really good to see you today. I said, oh, man, I'm great. Thanks, man. Cool. And every day, and at first I'm like, I'm not fucking with homeless people, whatever.
Yeah.
And he was his name was Sean, and he was super gracious. He loved to smoke rock. And so he would go on binges, though, and he would go downtown and he would smoke rock, and then he would fucking burn his life down and he'd come back. So him on the come up was when he was able to stand outside Ralph's and beg.
Right.
Right? His shitty spots were in between there. And he was just always so gracious, and I didn't really get it until I saw the opposite of that. And I was outside the Beverly Center one day, and there was a guy, and he's faking a limp, and he's dirty as fuck, and he's like, hey, can you help me? And he can't. And I'm like, are you speaking orc to me? Or what?
Yeah.
And I go, I'm about to kick you in front of a bus, bro. There's zero help for you here. And I was driving back, and I thought, how different a reaction you have from that guy than you have from Sean, and that's all about you, So the happier you are, the nicer you are, the kinder you are, the more you want to fuck with Sean. And the more an employer would want to fuck with you, or the more you're it started kind of dawning on me at that time. And then it was one of these things that years before that, I'd been in New Mexico and I was digging ditches for this electrical contractor. And the guy I was listening to, he was talking about dictating what kind of life you're going to have, deciding yourself before the thing happens. And I thought, well, I've got to get the ditch has to be dug.
Yeah.
I can feel about it like this, or I can feel about it like that. Feeling about it badly makes me feel badly. And so I just thought, man, I'm going to fall in love with this. And then I go, ooh, be careful of that, because if you fall in love with digging ditches, then you're a ditch digger.
Right.
And then what I found was that wasn't true. What I found was you learn how to fall in love with your life. And then that's a transferable skill. And then the more in love you are with things, people are like, wow, he's really, all you have to do is be in love with something and be awesome at it. And other people will look at that and go, I want to fuck with that too.
Yeah.
And then that gets better and that creates energy. And then the people aspect for me is being very careful and sensitive about who's around me. And I'm really sensitive to that. And so
what do you mean?
I only keep the best, highest vibration people around me. And if you're a dude that talks about other people a lot, or that is mean-spirited or something like that, and that's cool, man, if that's where you're at, but I just don't want to be around that very much. And I don't want to partake in those conversations very much. And like we were talking about before, I don't know if it was on the air or off, but where, sometimes I'll fall back into that and I'll talk shit about Fred or whatever. And it's and then you're like, well, now you're not that guy. It's like, you know, a lot of people in here and,
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, there's those slip ups, but the people that I'm around, they'll call me on that too. And they'll go, oh dude, yeah, but he's great. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's right. Because I want to be that. And so,
But being positive doesn't mean, and having a positive outlook, everybody, doesn't mean that every now and then you're not critical of somebody. And that's not what that means.
Right.
You can and by the way, and I think this is a huge problem right now. Somehow criticism has turned into you hate it.
you're judgmental.
Yeah, but criticism is like it's also how you get better.
It's also called a critique.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
And that's what when people are like, oh, you're judgmental. I'm like, it's called discernment.
Yeah.
Nobody ever taught me when I was a kid. And they're like, have bad judgment or have no judgment. We'd like you to have no judgment. Like, no, they're like, we need you to have good judgment.
Yeah.
If you're going to pull the car into traffic, you need to be judging the speed of the other car. Like, it's a skill set to know who to have lunch with, who to follow, who to emulate.
And it doesn't make me a hater.
No.
It just means that, like, I have one small criticism of whatever.
Or because I'm aware of this. Like, was I not supposed to be aware of that because it's ugly? It's an ugly trait of yours? Like, it's like I'm aware of it. And it doesn't mean I don't like you either. I mean, I was talking, Andy Stumpf is a guy I was on a podcast with, and he's a fucking SEAL team. He's a dude. He put down a lot of people, and we had a different dialogue about like Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah.
And I was like, those people should have just been let free and exonerated. Like, what the fuck? We just kidnapped people and locked them up and tortured them. It's not very cool. And he's like, yeah, but what do you do now that you forget? I agree, that's what we did, but I go, well, you let him out. And he goes, no, you shoot him in the head. And I go, I don't think so. He says, every one of them. He says, and I would sleep great. And I go, wow. I go, but you can't do that before. That's like thought police shit. You can't do that before. Anyway, and we go back and forth. He's got great points on it, and I'm able to look at that, and I've got points on it that I feel strongly about, and he's able to look at it. My point is that we don't agree necessarily, or didn't at the time, and love and respect each other still.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like both of us don't have to agree, and neither of us need to be wrong. You know what I mean?
Yes,
It's a huge
especially
thing.
that's the thing. Like we've like an opinion is just that. So it's like what you just argued about. There was no what your opinion wasn't his. There's no factual right or wrong.
Right.
But somehow people have turned opinions into facts.
And that becomes news, which is a trip too.
It's really dangerous when you're making your opinion a fact. Mm-hmm. It's really and when you use the internet to only search out the information that you want.
Well, and how fucking beautiful is it too when you can go, no, dude, like you respect somebody, love them enough, you're in the listening instead of in a rebuttal.
Yeah.
In your mind, and you go, no, I can see that. I can think I feel that way too, and your mind changes.
Yeah.
And that is, that's awesome. It's not to be rigid in your mind. Like everybody voted, like it's a weird thing. Everybody voted for George Bush. They go, well, yeah, he's dumb and he's wrong, but at least he's got, he stands for what he stands for. He's not a wishy-washy guy. I'm like, okay, like that's ludicrous. But that's that kind of thing where you can have confidence with no merit. You got no reason to be confident. And if you're confident enough, people will be like, I guess that's our leader.
That is so true, dude.
Crazy.
You don't have to know what you're talking about, but if you say something with confidence, people will be like, sure, yep.
Especially anybody with any humility, because you're like, well, I know I don't know, but he seems so sure of himself, I guess I'm fooled.
Yeah, I do that with words all the time. I'm like, I don't think that's a word, but I'm not going to challenge him because he said it with such confidence.
Right.
As somebody, the word was entrepreneurship, and I go, okay. I was like,
seems like more syllables than we've ever used before.
It's I guess okay because with such confidence, I was like, entrepreneur. Yeah. Sure, I'm with it.
And these paradoxes, though, bro, because that's the other part of it too. Is that there is the other side of that where belief is everything. If I'm believing I'm positive, then I'm behaving positively, and then I'm thinking positive. Or if I believe that I'm fucking really good, I have a rudimentary skill of fighting, but I have a fucking belief in myself. Ooh, that's Conor McGregor. Dude, you know what I mean? And so like that shit pays bills too at certain points.
100%.
And so, but that's the thing that the nuances that I can't get, I don't know how to articulate it well enough, and I wish I did, about the discernment that it takes to go, yeah, this is true, but also the equal and opposite is equally true. Like these
With opinions
paradoxes
there, yeah.
we live in, it's pretty crazy.
And that's the thing, man. Like, so if we should definitely think of facts as facts, but we should stop getting so upset with opinions. Obviously, except for opinions like, Mexicans are terrible, and
Right.
with opinions, when people have different, it's what we were talking about earlier about at the bottom line. Were we talking about this when I was saying that everybody on both sides, they want the same thing. They want
Yes,
safety.
exactly.
Right?
We're talking about communism.
So we're
and stuff.
talking
Yeah.
about the same thing, right?
Yep.
So you want the same thing. It's just your opinion on the path on how to get there. And that's where we kind of need to get better with each other. I performed at Guantanamo, and to talk to those guys. Oh yeah, dude.
That must have been eye-opening.
Oh my God. Okay. First of all, it was such an honor for me to be there. And my son had just gone into the Army. So it was the first time I was looking at soldiers as other people's kids.
Yeah, wow.
So different than looking.
Same with strippers.
Yes.
Start doing that.
By the way, yeah.
Same
that happened
thing
with me and my daughter. I was
yeah.
like, I can't go in there anymore. That's somebody's daughter. Yeah. Because that would fucking no.
Yeah.
But that was crazy. So it changed. First of all, it changed my way of thinking. Like, well, these are kids. These are somebody's fucking kids. But to go down there to Guantanamo and see the whole setup and to see the original jail, because you talk to the guys down there. And by the way, did you know Guantanamo? We were told had the highest turnover rate. Like, people go crazy quickest in Guantanamo.
Really?
Fucking island fever.
Wow.
They're in this tiny little. They can't go into Cuba. They're on this tiny little fucking block of land, and that's it. When we were there, McDonald's was out of burgers, out of McNuggets. They only had like fries and apple pies, which is great. By the way, the two best items.
Man, can't live on that.
But it was like, island. But the soldiers were so happy to see us. But the jail, we got to go into all the jails, dude. It was we were standing
Now
up.
there are people in there?
Okay, so there was one jail we weren't allowed to go into. And they were both new jails, but the reason is they had the prisoners separated. There was one jail, and the one we were in, and we saw the cameras and all that stuff, and they had like Cheetos and Pepsi and PlayStations in every cell.
Wow.
And I was like, what's the, guy drinking a Pepsi, eating Cheetos, playing PlayStation? And I go, what's the deal? And the guy was like, yeah, we found that when we gave them PlayStation and Pepsi, they stopped throwing feces at us. And we were like, okay.
Seems like a good trade-off.
Yeah.
I can afford an Xbox for that.
Yeah. Now, the other jail was guys who they were like, you don't speak around them. And I said, why? And he said, because, these are young kids who come and they'll take inventory. And a year later, they'll just take inventory mentally of all the things you've said, and they'll pick up your sister's name. They'll pick up where she lives. And then by the end of that year, they'll pick up some facts, and they'll whisper through a door, I'm going to send some people to kill your sister Karen in Detroit. And all of a sudden, that 19-year-old has no fucking idea how he knows he has a sister Karen in Detroit.
Right.
And those guys, they keep separate. Because those guys are they're highly intelligent, criminal,
trained fuckers.
And they're like, we just can't, they just do not play well with other people.
And those are grown-ass men versus a 19-year-old's intellect.
100%.
That's nobody talks about that, but that's got to be starkly different.
And they've been trained in how to do that shit.
Yeah.
This
real intelligence shit, and it's a regular soldier.
Yeah. But it was fascinating. And I'll tell you something else, man. The guys down there will tell you, when they first started sending people to Guantanamo, they weren't prepared. They'll tell you.
I can't even imagine.
They'll tell you we did not have adequate jails. They were outside and exposed to the elements. But you know who else was? The guards.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, too. On that island, it's like
everybody.
That kid also is in jail.
Yes.
Like everybody that's there, if you work in the Corrections Institute, you are in prison for 12 hours a day or whatever you are.
But I'm telling you, these guys down in Guantanamo they also do a thankless job. One, because when you say the word Guantanamo, 70%, I would say, of this country have a negative view already, right? So they're not doing what other people continue to be, their idea to be the hero shit.
Right.
Oh, yeah, you served overseas? You're a hero. Come back. Oh, you were at fucking Guantanamo? Right? So there's always that thing.
For me, when you say it even, I just feel sad. I'm like, ooh, that poor guy. Like, Because it is thankless.
It's
in all
thankless,
the ways.
and they're doing
God
a
damn.
very difficult job, man, in a very difficult environment. And and I will say this: the kids, and they were kids. I was so impressed with all of them, and the people who ran the island. Like I said, they tell you they brought you to the old jail, and they were like, "Listen, we know that this was not adequate. It's why we built 2 new stuff."
Right.
But it wasn't adequate because we decided to throw them in jail like animals. It wasn't adequate because nobody was prepared for it. And all of a sudden we had these
this thing happened.
when we had these prisoners that we had to put somewhere, and it was designated to be here. And then so the only pictures that people show.
And to be fair, designated to be there because there we can put people, we can lock them up without any rights at all.
Yes, no, there's that.
So
there's
that
there's
aspect
that,
of
there's
it. There
that.
were other places, but Texas wasn't. That didn't fit the bill for what we wanted to do to those guys.
But the truth is, like, they were put in they'll tell you, we started building as soon as we were told people were coming. But when they got here, they had no choice. And the original spot was rough, dude. But it was.
I always think they should do like a fucking thing where, like at LAPD, all these kinds of hot zones, guys like that, like to have like full on, like we have meditation and massage and like, or whatever fucking niceties and things to help your mind and nourish you and nurture you. Cause we don't do shit. All this shit. I was walking through the airport today in Miami and there's like a DAV sign and I'm like, that's a private organization. All these things are not government things. And we fucking go, the government and these corporations use up these kids, use up these guys. And then you got it, like my friend fucking, they do, all these guys, they do all this stuff for the Navy SEAL Foundation. That's not a government program.
Yeah.
These are private programs because our government, who sings about you should be fucking honoring the troops so much, fucks them over, uses them up for minimum wage, and then fucks them over hardest and fastest forever. And the best they do is give them a good drug problem. They don't give them, like, it's fucking horrific.
It really is. The way we treat our military when they come home, if we invested half of the time and money that we do into training them,
Yes.
and just put it into when they get out. Mm-hmm. But it's like we've trained them, we wind them up, we tell them to act. You know, my son, I told you, did boots on the ground in Afghanistan, and he came back a little different, and he's got his PTSD issues. But I watched how they treated, and treated isn't the right word, but I watched with the training, I guess, or that he got when he got back. There was no training. There was, in my mind,
It's not like a good debrief.
No, you know what there should be, dude? When you come back from war, there should be, whether it's Miami or San Diego, there should be 3 or 4 months to decompress.
You go to boot camp for 3 or 4 or however long it is, you should
decompress.
Easily do that.
Let's give them a chance to learn, to re-assimilate, not to put them in the house with their fucking wife and kids right away. Let's get them with a bunch of other guys, like-minded situation.
Dude, he's a Marine. He got back. He's leading guy. Go ahead.
Oh, you know a guy who's a Marine. Yeah. Go ahead.
And his wife was a Marine also. But when he got back, he's like, she's not my Marine though. Like he was so segmented in his shit. He's like, I didn't get along. Like he didn't get along with anybody anymore. And he's just left in the wind. And the only thing he liked was to re-enlist. Go back out again.
It's really kind of sad that the only place and I don't mean this like you're not and thank you for your service and the fact that you're going out and doing shit I could never do. But I think it's sad that they're Americans and the only place they feel comfortable is getting deployed again.
And let's be honest too, is like all the soldiers aren't soldiers. Like there's not, like people are made to be different shit. And like a lot of those guys are just in poor economic backgrounds that are just looking for a job or a way out of their neighborhood. And then there they are and they're used up in that way, and that's why the PTSD, I was talking to a bunch of Spec Ops guys and I was thinking, we don't have a lot of that in the Spec Ops community. And I go, why is that, do you think? I said, because when we go in, we're there hunting, we're predators and we have an objective and we're going to complete that objective. And he said, when most guys that are infantry go in, they are reactive, they are prey. And so they cannot shoot on anybody. They can't do anything until they're attacked. And so they're waiting all the time for the next thing to happen.
That's so interesting.
And I was like, that is a psychic trick that happens. I believe that seems like a good explanation.
Yeah, because you get jumpy waiting for...
Yeah. You're not out there hunting and looking.
It's the difference
You're
between...
hoping to not get killed.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's like the difference between the way a tiger walks and the way something that is like a deer that's always twitchy and looking around because it knows that at any given moment, oh, I get fucked here.
Yep.
Right?
And so you put a bunch of deer under the leadership maybe of a lion, but there's still some deer. There's our deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that, dude.
It's a trip.
That
There's
is.
all that goes into it. And I don't know. And I'm like I said, I'm nearly retarded. You think if we had some fucking real bright scientific minds and some nurturing spiritualists, they're like, let's put together a 4-month program for every soldier that gets back.
It would be amazing.
And someone will be like, that's gay. I don't need that. But make them do it anyway and make everybody do it and pay them to do it. And
because
we'd
a lot
have
of
a better society after.
100%. And a lot of the people who are suffering are wives and kids. Because you're taking a killer. Let's make no mistake. That's what they were. You're training them to be killers.
Yeah.
And you're taking a killer, and then all of a sudden you're like, not a killer anymore.
Yeah.
Go live with the woman and the young ones.
Yep.
And they're like, no, wait.
Go work at FedEx.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a trip.
And then you're going to hear a loud noise, or someone's going to fucking say something to you, and you're going to be like, and killer's going to jump in.
Or because people say shit like, dude, I don't know what you get on the internet, but like on Instagram and shit like that. And when people are like, dude, I'd fucking kill you. Like it's not all the time, but like there's some dark shit that people say to you on the internet and all that kind of stuff. A guy like that he's going to take that seriously.
Yeah.
For me, I think you're a scared little bitch probably that smoked too much pot today and now you think you're a gangster. Got it. However, and then you're going to ask to take a picture when you see me in person. But that guy, maybe he hunts you. Or there's all of that.
It's fascinating, man. It's fascinating that the language we use when they come back is flowery. There's nothing flowery about what they just went through. And your brain, to me, is the most important muscle / organ in your body. Yeah. Right? So it really does control everything. Have you read there's some stuff online about how they're finding people who have mentally figured out a way to control their body's temperature.
Well, through Wim Hof and through his breathing, I've heard stuff like that, and like he cites some people, but I haven't looked into it.
So that shows you how powerful your brain is.
Yeah,
right. That shows you what.
I think he'd proven that he can get antigens into his body to the degree that they can fight illness.
Yes,
that he can they can inject him with a virus, and his body will fight that off.
To me, that's all brain. Mm-hmm. That's all brain. So why we're not nurturing that more for them when they get home is crazy.
But it's like the same reason we have a gas engine still in the car. They're for sure they could make it run on leaves or whatever.
Yeah.
But the oil and gas industry is a huge industry, and they'll kill everybody and buy up every patent and destroy all of that comes to pass like that. And the same way that whether it's through the big farm companies or the big prison companies or any of those, they need broken people. Broken people are easier to control.
That's why it's so baffling to me who we elected, dude. Because I would say that a lot of people that voted for Trump are anti-big business, are anti-Wall Street. They want an outsider.
Isn't it wild? That's what I mean. The biggest trick the GOP pulled is like
this dude is big business. Yeah. He is Wall Street. He's made a living stepping on poor people's
on little
backs.
guys. Yeah, little construction workers. Good. We're gonna go bankrupt and fuck you.
And so and I do get. If people weren't big Hillary Clinton fans, that's fine.
And that's the thing, too, I think that we got to say, too, is what we talked about in the yard, is that just because you're not a fan of this doesn't make you a fan of the other thing.
Yeah.
They both were shit choices.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want the VD sandwich or the fucking the colon sandwich. I don't want any of it. I don't want any of that.
Yeah, I try to stay away from the VD sandwich.
But I think that the thing is that we had the biggest lack of turnout ever in a major election.
Because they were both fucking terrible.
And so they were all like Ari Shaffir, where he's like, I'm going to be a conscientious objector to the whole thing. If I vote in it, it means that I'm for the system and I'm against the system. It doesn't work. It's clearly broken by our choices. And I think another 50 or 60% of the people in the country that were able to vote felt that way.
To me, if it had been any other election, I could have, with a good conscience, done that. I couldn't do it with this guy. Because I think I just couldn't do it with this guy. There was no way, in my mind, anything. So if you were going to tell me
anything was better,
if you're going to tell me Hillary Clinton is basically this government and we're going to get 4 more years of Obama, I'd be like, okay,
right.
Let's change it next time. But let's look around. Everybody's lives over the last 8 years. Can you tell me how it got demonstrably worse?
Right.
So, okay, if we're going to, this dude, the way he interacts
I kind of
with.
feel like it's like this, though. I mean, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
If you talk to anybody outside the country, they're like,
yeah.
And I'm like, whatever with your Brexit, England. You guys aren't great either. But like the thing is I feel like Hillary, the world's on fire. The oceans are burning, and we're headed for the fucking cliff.
Yep.
Now, Hillary is a good politician.
Yes.
She knows the difference between Sunni and Shiite, which Donald Trump doesn't even know what those words mean. Mm-hmm. So she's going to really kind of mitigate the losses on the way there, but she's also going to suck up every dollar and piece of energy she can on the way, but it's the same cliff. Mm-hmm. Now, Donald's going to get us to the cliff much quicker. She's going to do it because she's a vampire, psyching the life of it, everything on the way down. Donald's just like a crazy idiot that's fucking hammered, it seems like, that's just fucking going towards the cliff faster. But it's the same cliff, and maybe there's something to be said about getting off the cliff faster. And we come to a...
Maybe.
I don't know. But I do know that it's like... I don't know. I was talking to this guy that he runs this big corporation, and he goes, I own it. It's my name on the corporation, but I don't get to make those decisions. There's a whole board of directors. He says, so whoever wins, he's kind of like, the system it dictates who the guy is.
Yep, I agree. And listen, that's the thing. Like, at the end of the day, Congress and the Senate, and they have, the Supreme Court, they have a lot to say about what's going to happen, which is why I say vote locally.
What do you think? Did he really get peed on?
I think he's been peed on in his life.
No, but do they have videos, the KGB?
I don't know about that. I think there's zero doubt in my mind that they have something on him.
Because he sucks dick on Putin like crazy.
Listen, somehow...
And he's not nice like that to anybody. He's like a little kid that, like, it's a trip.
He's shown Putin more respect than anybody else. The CIA...
It's almost like it's a different person.
Dude!
It's almost like the way he is, and then when Putin's there, he's like...
That's why he's got to have something.
It's weird.
Putin has something on him. Yeah. I don't know what it is. He's got something on him. And, a lot of it, I've read some things, and who knows what's real or fake.
Right.
But that Russia and Russian businesses have lent his corporation so much money because, he can't get loans from banks in the United States anymore.
I didn't know that.
So he's getting money from other...
How shocking was it to you that he won, that it was that close?
It wasn't shocking that he won at all. I tour the country.
Okay. That's what Bill Burr says, too. He's like...
I wasn't surprised at all.
Really?
It was funny to me that people in New York and California were surprised.
Yeah, I was shocked. I was like, wow, I was like, it's close. I didn't think he had any chance of winning.
I've said this before, but some friends in Wisconsin, white guys who voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012 voted for Trump.
Right.
And I'll tell you.
There is a thing of wanting it to be different. I can understand that.
You know what they said? The Democrats haven't spoken to me directly in 8 years. They court the LGBT, and they court the African Americans and the Latinos and the Muslims and the immigrants. They haven't spoken to me in 8 years. And I was like, And I said, yeah, but when you vote for this dude, you may be voting against other people's civil rights. And he said, this time I'm voting for my family. That's exactly what he said. And I was like, listen, man, I think it's... And I tried to talk to him until I was blue in the face. And then he was like, let's just, and he said to me, it can't get any worse right now for me. I'm rolling the dice on what?
Yeah.
And so it was a little upsetting. Oh shit. I got to go.
Okay.
I can't believe we've been doing this 2 hours.
Yeah, it's a late in the game thing with that whole they haven't spoken to me and all that kind of stuff for a long time. And I think I would, that whole conversation, every time I talk about it, I get left with the idea that we are so self-obsessed in the country that nobody votes for what the best of the country is. They vote for what their own personal betterment would be. And if we could all just get on the same page of a little bit of altruism and go, what would really be the best for us cumulatively? Because we've all got to live in this motherfucker. Anyway.
It's hard to look outside right here.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to.
It's so important. And that's what that traveling the country is that we're talked about. That's what I think like psychedelics can be. I think that being in the listening to the guy in Wisconsin and going, okay, I got to look at this from different ways.
Yeah.
Because my viewpoint is not the right one just because it's mine.
No.
Like that's retarded.
No. Yeah. Absolutely. Dude.
Love you. It's great to have you on my podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. What do you want to plug, man?
Oh, well, listen, I run this little caveman coffee company. It's called cavemancoffeeco.com, and we ship wonderful coffee
so
around
good,
the
everybody.
world. We do single origin, single estate coffees, and we're really careful about where we get everything from. I think us and On It right now are the only two that do 100% coconut oil MCT, which is a medium chain triglyceride. You can read all about all that shit on the site.
Do you put that in your coffee?
I do. I blend it in there in lieu of cream, and it's great. And it's good. Like I got into it based on like ketogenic diets and kind of doing that like in, I don't know, 2008 or something. And then when all this came up, I go, oh, well, I want to make something that's not really available. And so we started doing that. Pirate Life Radio is my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher. My name's Tait Fletcher, and you can find me on Instagram or anywhere else, I guess. And I try to stay interactive with all that stuff.
Yeah, guys, listen.
I'm easy to find.
I would suggest, I do this every week. I suggest a little positivity, and I would suggest following Tait. He's it's a good follow, dude.
You know, one thing I want to say before we go, you'd asked a question, and I started talking about digging ditches and stuff. But one of the other things is everybody has made such an influence on me to make me, which I'm super grateful for. But one of the other tricks that I started doing was after I got appraised about Eckhart Tolle and his teachings and the way he thought about stuff and this idea of that you can only really think one thought at one time. You can't sustain two thoughts at one time in the mind, and it can be a negative thought or a positive thought. There's no gray area, and the multitude of thoughts that I have dictates what the value of my life is, whether it's good or bad, and it might not feel authentic all the time if you're feeling like shit to think positively or to think a good thought or whatever, but it'll never serve you the other way to be like, man, nothing works out for me anyway, or this or that. It's like, and so it was like a retraining of my mind that I did, and I did that by becoming a watcher of my thoughts, by going, who is that in my head that as soon as you pull in front of me, I'm like, you cocksucker, like, and to distance myself from, I'm not that guy. There's another being that's looking at that voice, and that's like an ego that I look at a lot. And so how do I start to learn how to direct my thoughts and have dominion over them so that I can keep a pistol out of my mouth?
I like that, dude. And I would say this for anybody who's thinking about that, and it's hard to be positive and stay real. I would say try those three things. Just write them down. Just try doing something for yourself 3 times a day, and you start to feel better about yourself. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to write it down and check it off. When you look at that list every day and you see those 3 things that you accomplished, you will begin to feel like you can accomplish things every day of your life. It is so important. I still do it, dude.
Yeah.
I still do it. To see myself check it off is like, I've accomplished that.
It's a huge device.
I've accomplished that.
Yeah.
And it really does make you feel better.
I think also, like, one of the things that I do and I tell everybody all the time is, and it's a huge topic, but a simple thing, like simple tricks. I needed ground I could walk on, like a simple idea of spirituality. And one of those things was, if I'm feeling lonely and I get sucked into that and into that darkness and everything, is to call somebody.
Yeah.
Call somebody that's actually lonely. If I'm feeling like hatred, then look to be loving, and all those things. Like if I look to the opposite of the thing, if I do contrary action, it pays huge dividends.
Wait, I got to go, everybody.
All
Tait
right.
Fletcher.
Love you. Thanks.
Later. 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 Fletcher.
Love you. Thanks.
Later.